am your host, Doc Rotten, and this is Gruesome Magazine, where we review the very latest in streaming and video on-demand horror movies. Each week, my co-host, Jeff Mohr, Vanessa Thompson, and Crystal Cleveland, and I will take a look at various spooky, scary, and gory genre offerings. With me this week is my co-host, Jeff Mohr. Jeff, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing great. I'm looking forward to talking about these two movies. They are talk-worthy.
They are talk-worthy. They are. That is a great way to put it. They are talk-worthy. Yeah, of course, we have two movies to talk about. But also joining us this week is Crystal Cleveland, also known as the Living Dead Girl. Yes?
Yes. I can't wait to talk about these too. I think these could be some fun ones.
In the pre-show, you mentioned the word polarizing, and I think that we might find a little bit of that. All right. The first film on our agenda is called Hagazussa. Some of the titles have a little bit more extra on that, and if you want to kind of get an idea what it is, just look at the first three letters, and I think that kind of clued me in. If you think of the word hag as being a witch. Yep, that's where we're going with this. It is currently on Shudder. We're going to be talking about that. We also have the film Deadsight, which is a zombie film where the lead character is partially blind and has to escape zombies without being able to see them coming or where he's going. It is a much smaller zombie apocalyptic film than many, but that doesn't mean that it's not full of its own thrills and chills. All right, let's just dive right into these and start off with Hagazussa. Like I said, currently on Shudder. The director is Lukas Feigelfeld. Cast includes Alexandra Quinn, Selena Peter, and Claudia Martini. And it is a dark legend of a young woman named Albrin and her struggle to preserve her own sanity and whether or not witches are involved. They are certainly called that. And, well, does the film reveal that? That's what we're going to be discussing. Let's find out what our first impressions are, starting off with Jeff.
This is not traditional storytelling by any stretch of the imagination. And by the way, there's no anime, so I don't think it falls into the hipster realm.
I agree.
But it's right in my wheelhouse. It's like lots of stuff that I like. The atmosphere is just super thick, for me anyway, with dread. It's beautifully shot. The score, for me, was anxiety-inducing, and it's definitely a mind screw, trying to figure out exactly what's going on. I wasn't exactly sure what was happening or what it meant, so I had to go in search of that after I watched it, and then I watched it again, and I'm still not 100% certain, but I think it's open to interpretations. Writer-director is Lukas Feigelfeld, and he says that he was influenced by Andrei Tarkovsky, who did Solaris in 1972, the original one, and Andrzej Zalewski, who did Possession in 1981, with Sam Neill and Isabel Adjani, and then F.W. Murnau that did Haunted Castle and Nosferatu in the silent era, which for me, I can really see influences from Possession and from silent film, because this is almost a silent film in terms of dialogue. There's way more time spent looking at people than listening to dialogue. However, it's not completely silent because I think they make effective use of, forest sounds, twigs cracking, birds, anything like that, wind, weather. So there's a fair amount of noise going on most of the time, or sound, I should say, maybe not noise. So for me, I think what this is really about is, it's another film with a really small cast, and the majority of the weight rests on the shoulders of Alexandra Quinn as the adult Albrin. It takes place in the Austrian Alps during the 15th century, and I think it's trying to tell a story of what it was like for this woman to live as an outcast during a time that Christianity was being spread throughout Europe, and in particular this kind of remote setting where a lot of the folklore and pagan beliefs still existed. So there was a lot of hate and discrimination and abuse going on, and she gets a lot of persecution. And what would it be like if somebody who was isolated from the rest of society, and she lives in a small cabin separated from everybody else, had a mental illness or had some delusions. What would that be like? And if people were accusing you of being pagan and being a witch, and they thought that of her mother, right? Her mother dies at the beginning of the film, and it seems to be like, maybe from the plague, but nobody else, she doesn't get sick or anything. She's actually a little girl at the beginning, so she grows up totally by herself, from the age of, I think she's, we get the idea that she just started her period, I believe. So I don't know how old she is, if she's like 12 or something like that. She seems younger, but I thought there was a definite indication where she had started menstruating. So I don't know how much of this to tell, because I don't want to give too much away, but she basically lives on the side of the mountain with her goats and tries to sell milk in the village. And she's sort of a pariah, they make fun of her. And this one woman befriends her, Svinda, and seems to care about her. But some things happen, and maybe that turns out it wasn't. I think an event happens that changes Svinda's relationship with Albrin. But anyway, I got to stop talking and let you guys have a thing. But anyway, I really like this, although it's a thick watch. It's nearly impenetrable.
Oh my God, it is the thickest of watches. All right, we'll get to my opinions here in a second. If that didn't clue anybody in, but let's find out what Crystal thought. What is your first impression of Hagazussa?
It's an interesting flick, and I agree with the thickness. This movie's broken into 4 parts: shadows, horn, blood, and fire. And they each kind of coincide with what each part of the movie we're seeing is. So as far as the story, it's not really a story. I mean, I guess you could say maybe, sure, but I feel like the story is like kind of just secondary to the character enhancement or growth. I think that it's a sad movie, like we talked about, like The Wind, about like isolation and loneliness. But I think even more than that, Ibern has this desire to be loved, and it's kind of a sad thing. Mm-hmm. You never really know how these 2 women became pregnant and had children, because Ibern is a mother herself to a girl. I think that the witchcraft element is not just heavily implied. I think it's meant to be quite certain, but yes, also with hallucinations and a little insanity mixed in. But I think that it would make sense that the moment that Ibern started her period, which I agree with you, even though she seemed young, I think they went through puberty younger, that's when her mother's descent into sickness and madness happened. I think the 2 would make sense that they coincide. She's now taken over for the mother. I think this movie could trigger a lot of people. I mean, you deal with rape, cannibalism, and not quite bestiality, but not that far from it either. There's a lot of elements. Just, I think that's a fair warning to people, I mean, that could be tough. Actually, some of it felt sad and dreary, but also I feel like it wanted to be something, but there's something keeping it back. Personally, I enjoyed the latter half of the movie, but that's because I'm a horror movie lover, and they did have some gore, which was actually done really well and a little creepy and a little bit of a payback. There's some revenge elements to this that I enjoyed, but I could see that they were trying to do these really beautiful shots of the landscape and things like that, but I felt like they were actually not shot that well. But that's just me. That's my personal opinion. There's also a lot of things that I really liked. There's some elements of where she has a skull, and there's some shots of that I found very interesting and really enjoyed. And I was like, oh, that'd be a nice poster on my wall. So the cinematography was actually kind of hit or miss for me. The story as well. It definitely explained everything, though. At least it didn't get to such a trippy or hallucinogenic point that we didn't understand what was happening. And for that, I appreciate it because it was more obvious. I thought the acting was impeccable. I really thought the character development was good. I felt the betrayal was a little crappy and made me really hate one character, but they got their payback. So, I mean, a little witchcraft never hurt anyone except the whole town. But yeah, I didn't dislike the movie. I have to say that for sure. I definitely liked it. I know that some people are going to love this movie, and I didn't love it. I actually wish, like, that latter half, there's something about it that I really enjoyed more. I don't know. It wasn't even slow. It's not a horribly slow burn. I really liked The Witch, and I felt like that was much slower than this movie because they always had some sort of weird element or something happening in this that kind of kept your interest. Yeah. So just as far as like first thoughts, I liked it, but I didn't love it. Yeah.
Okay. So impenetrable is the perfect way to describe this film for me. And the latter half of the film does not save it. I dislike this film. This film I thought was incredibly slow. I was like, can the mother die already?
But didn't the boils look really good, though? I was like, oh, that's gross. Yeah, I like that.
Everything looked effective, from every vomit to every weird place you put the finger. But man, this film just tested my patience. I thought it was incredibly slow. I do believe, yes, I think it looked good. I thought the cinematography was actually rather good. And I thought the little girl stood out quite strong for me. And then I liked the adult version of her as well. But I found myself kind of wishing that somewhere in between there we could have had the character. I don't know. I didn't connect with this film. I didn't really. By the time things happened, I was already done. I had to try to get back to it a couple times because I kept falling asleep. And then I was like, oh, where did I fall asleep? And I got to zip through it to get back to where that is. And like, okay, she was at the fence and they're reading for the first time, or at least not the first time, but they're becoming friends. And oh, I got to get back there. And where's that? It's a 40-minute round. So this movie was a chore for me. Something about the story just never connected. I think the more you're into the folklore or folklore itself, I think the more you're going to like this. I love The Witch, the film The Witch.
Yeah, me too.
I didn't find that boring at all. Was it slower than this? In a lot of ways. It also was a little bit more of a challenge because of the language, right? Because they spoke such, tried to be authentic to the language. But I found that movie a rewarding challenge, where I found this film an aggravating challenge and did not enjoy it. And by the time to the latter half, my decision was already made. So I was kind of like, okay.
I can see that.
Yeah.
So this movie, I dislike it greatly, but it's not necessarily a bad film. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure.
It makes sense that you could see something that someone would like or admire, but not necessarily enjoy it yourself. It just means you could see beauty in things that, aren't necessarily beautiful for yourself. It's like, yeah.
Yeah. This is one that I think, I would never actually make it through this film if I weren't having to be talking about it.
Wow, it was that. Wow.
Yeah, I would just go
okay.
click.
Wow, you really. See, yeah, no, I definitely enjoyed it way more than you then. I found some parts of it. I was like, this is really not going to happen, right? Because you could tell what was to come, and I'm like, oh, well, yeah, they went ahead and went there, huh? And so I like it when the boundaries are pushed and things are, a little crazy, but
did they do it soon enough? See, to me,
that is what I'm saying. I think maybe had that started sooner, even for me, that I would have, because those things, I was like, wow.
See, for me, it's the structure and the pacing, and it really killed me. And I think that the structure and pacing is built on one, where the country in which it was filmed and the folklore in which it's based, right? Mm-hmm. Which is lost in translation, air quotes kind of thing for me, I guess. So
I was into it right from the beginning. And the first scene with the mother and Albrun as a girl tells you a lot. They're going to go sledding on a hill where there's other kids and there are other mothers. But the other mothers, when they get there, turn away from Albrun's mother, and none of the kids play with Albrun. So right away, we know they're outcasts for some reason or another. Then I was kind of into the whole thing with the mother getting sick and what was going on there and how the kid was taking care of her and how, oh my God, what must it have been like I guess it's a doctor or is it a priest, but comes out with a nun, or was that a nurse? I don't know.
It looked like they're kind of like, they're probably at the time, it's probably both, like a...
Probably dual role, yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and they're like, yeah, they don't even say this. They just kind of shake their head and leave this young girl there to take care of her dying mother without comment. And then once her mother dies, and I thought that was cool too.
Was it?
I did. I like it because it showed some conflict there, I think, and where she finds her and how she finds her, and it's colder than the heck out, and there's snakes on her body, and so there's not going to be cold-blooded animals. So it was a completely unnatural setting. Then we flash forward, I don't know how much, 15, maybe 20 years or something, and Albrun's got a baby. And so then you kind of realize, there was no mention made of her father. And now somebody asks her who the father is, and she just doesn't even answer. She just kind of ignores the question. So we don't know where this baby came from. Did one of the villagers rape her? Was it some sort of pagan thing? Was it some sort of
That's kind
demon?
Of what I feel like it was. Yeah, I feel like it was like a continuation. I feel like this was going to be a cycle, and that's why her father is not ever mentioned. And then, so I think it's kind of meant to just keep. And she had a girl as well, So it did seem very,
And the baby, for the most part, seemed unnaturally well behaved, except in a couple of spots, which I think were indicators for the baby was fussing for a reason. So I think you can look at this two different ways. I think you can totally get into the witchcraft, mythology, paganism, whatever, supernatural, or you can look at it as somebody who's insane and delusional and then adds to that by taking a hallucinogenic at one point. I think that could explain almost everything except maybe the snake and the final scene is sort of unexplainable without the supernatural.
Yeah, I'm just saying you might need to be jacked up on caffeine. I'm just saying.
Actually, that was something I had in my notes that I didn't say was don't try to watch this if you're tired. Because I think there's long stretches where there's no dialogue, and I'd be interested in talking about the cinematography, but I thought it was beautiful, both when she was in the scene and also when they were just sort of they kind of used it as scene changes. I think they would show a mountain scene, which was really beautiful, and then get back to what she was doing in the woods or around the house, etc.
Maybe that's what it was for me. I just felt like maybe I felt it was just a little unnecessary. Like with some movies, they have that, and I appreciate it. For some reason, with this movie, I didn't.
Okay.
I don't know why, because it looked pretty. I think that I wanted this movie to be a little bit more direct overall, and it did, become more direct. And I think that had it been a little bit more direct the entire time, it would be more compelling from the start.
Yeah.
But I didn't find it very slow. I found it interesting. I found the relationship with the mother in the beginning very interesting. Actually, the relationship throughout, even. She has a weird thing going on with that.
I thought, too, when her quote-unquote friend, Svinda, comes and tells her the priest wants to see her, and so she goes to this, basically an ossuary, where they're like storing the skulls and bones.
See, all I thought of was like Paris Catacombs is what it reminded me of. Yeah.
And he gives her this little speech about having to get rid of the sacrilege or something, and then gives her this skull. And I actually, you tell me what your take was on that, but I thought that was her mother's skull.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely her mother's skull.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And that was getting rid of the sacrilege in the ossuary. Well, because the painting of the wreath on the skull matched the trim on the mother's scarf, the roses and leaves, ferns and stuff.
It talked to her.
Yes,
and it actually talked to Swinda. Yeah, it kind of spoke to her, too.
Right.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the thing that changed Swinda's outlook.
That's an interesting...
She was all smiles and friends, and then all of a sudden...
That's the problem. Yeah, this movie had already lost me by that point.
She stares at that skull and kind of goes into a daze, and then she kind of jerks herself out of it, and so she was in a trance or something.
So let's wrap up our thoughts on Hagazussa. Let's give our final thoughts, our score, and favorite scene. Jeff, start us off.
So I like this a lot, and I think it's beautiful. I think it's well acted. I think it's slow, maybe leisurely, or it takes its time. You get the total feel of what Albrun's life is like, I think, as you go through this. And then the acting, Alexandra Quinn was excellent. Selena Peter as young Albrun, she had a definite presence, and then Tanya Petrovsky as Svinda was really disturbing. She had a presence as well. And Claudia Martini, I thought, was great as Luther. I like this a lot. I'm giving this a 4. And my favorite scene, I'm going to say Svinda's last meeting with Albrun.
Okay.
Which is a fair amount. They're sitting on the side of the hill talking, and then her last line makes you go, what? She's acting like this is their buddies, and then the last line she says is a real slam, and what she says into her ear is the total, complete betrayal.
All right. Crystal, what is your final thoughts, your score, and favorite scene for Hagazussa?
Like I said, I liked it. I didn't love it. I think it's an interesting watch, though, and I think that the end or that the last half or so I think it is kind of a must watch. I think it's an interesting watch, and I think it's a little shocking, which I enjoy, a little gory, which I enjoy even more, and I think it's interesting. I gave this movie a 3, so pretty good. Yeah. Actually, I've got to say, there's several scenes that I really enjoyed in this that I could point out. But probably my favorite scene would be when she finds the goat in the barn. Yeah. Yeah. Little plop.
Did you say plop?
Yep. Yes.
Oh, come on.
Drip, plop, drip.
Oh, man. All right. So for me, typically I like movies that are in this genre, right? The slow burn. Well, I'm calling this a slow burn. The slow burn, is very purposely paced, but, like The Witch. I love The Witch. Even the Jim Jarmusch film, which is very monotonely paced, I enjoyed most anything from A24, which this could easily be an A24 film, I would say. However, for whatever reason, this film did not connect with me. I did not enjoy this. I would say it's a must miss, not a must watch. I give it a 2. It's definitely because by the time things happen, I'm already checked out. I mean, and I would suggest that's me being unfair, partially. But it's also up to the film to make sure I don't do that. And I don't think...
It's fair.
I don't think this film is structured in a way, at least the way I was reacting to it, in a way that could prevent me from having it. It's just, there's probably circumstances where I could have watched this where it would have helped it. Like, I think if I saw this at a film festival, I would probably be giving you a much stronger reaction. But seeing it at home alone, late at night without caffeine, not a good thing. Not a good thing. Did not help at all. So I'm giving it a 2.
That's better than I thought.
And that's because it looks great. It looks great, the cast is incredibly convincing in their roles. Now, Jeff, you might appreciate this. The mother reminded me of that crazy old hag woman that's in one of the shorts in Black Sunday. Is that the right one?
Black Sabbath.
Black Sabbath. Yeah, there's all those. You know the one with the drips, right?
Yes.
No, it's not the drips.
I know what you mean. Though.
Is it the drips? It is the drips, right? Because she's like, oh, she has that grimace and she's in the bed. And oh, yeah. So this woman reminded me of her. So that's the thing that got me the most. But at the same time, I was like, die already. Come on, die already. You're just, how long are you going to be in this bed throwing up? And, her discovery, is also kind of gruesome early on. But it's so oddly shot because, there is no dialogue. There is no reaction. And you're just, bleh, it's just there. Bleh. And which is kind of cool because you're there, you absorb it. What was missing for me is what's the emotion, what's the arc,
sure,
and
sure.
Until you get to the final act, there isn't much, right?
Just a quick comment. So I enjoyed the look of this and the acting and everything, but I was confused and vague about what the intent or what was going on. And so I read an interview with the director.
Yeah.
And it made a lot of sense. So then I went back and watched it again, and it made a big difference. Now, should you have to do that? No,
you shouldn't.
But I enjoy doing stuff like that. So.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes it's part of the fun, right? To kind of really absorb a film in a way that it's intended. But the scene that disturbed me the most, even with all, the latter scenes, is at one point the mother, who should be dead by now.
Oh, I know. Yep.
Brings the daughter in and cuddles her, but then does something just incredibly disturbing. Okay, so why I reacted to that, one, I'm not the right gender for that to be as disturbing as it could be. But that's the strong, up until later in the film, that's the strongest reaction you get from the girl, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Which amplifies that, just how messed up that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not my favorite scene, just to be clear. But it's the one that probably disturbed me the most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's right up there.
All right, well, there it is, Hagazussa. I think I watched this, not on Shudder. I watched it on Amazon Prime. So it's out there to be watched. It had actually gotten quite a lot of praise when it was doing the film festival run. So it was definitely a film that I had heard about and was looking forward to. And then Jeff, you and I were talking about it, so it ended up on our list, and I'm glad it's come and gone. That's not how I meant that, but it's so right. All right, let's move on to our second film, and this film is called Deadsight, which is an interesting play on words to describe what this film is about. It's from director Jesse Thomas Cook. The cast includes Liv Collins, Adam Siebold, and Rye Barrett. And it is coming on DVD, on demand, and digital HD on July 2nd. And it is basically a man with partial blindness wakes up to find the world has been overrun by zombies and is in a very rural part of somewhere. And he has to avoid being not only attacked and killed by zombies, but shot by people trying to shoot zombies. It's clever, it's interesting, and we also have a female cop who also happens to be very pregnant, involved as well. Feels kind of Fargo-ish with her, but not. But yeah, so these two characters collide, and survival is the name of the game. The shit hits the fan. Let's just put it that way. All right, Crystal, what is your first impression of Deadsight?
So I should start off by saying that I am probably the only horror lover in the world who is not super duper crazy about zombies. Zombies are not my favorite type of flick. I think it all relates back to what type of antagonist you like. You can take the silent ones like Michael Myers, Jason, or you prefer the ones that are more talkative like Freddy and Chucky, and I like the talky ones. So, that being said, I have to say, I liked this movie, and I didn't mind that it was a zombie movie. I have to completely agree with you. It's a zombie, quote-unquote, apocalypse on a much smaller scale. I mean, we only see it from the perspective of two people who are both actually, for lack of a better way to describe this, physically incapacitated in some way. I hate to say that about pregnancy, but it does limit what you can do. She's very pregnant. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming like 9 months. And of course, like you said, he is like partially blind. I actually wish we had gotten a little bit more information on what happened to his eyes. I think that was really interesting because he seemed to be able to partially see at times, or a bit at least. I don't know if it was getting better throughout, but I liked the use of lighting in this movie particularly. And I know that it seems like a strange thing to say, but, and I say lighting because in the beginning, when you're with him and kind of throughout, it's got these like cold blue tones throughout the whole movie until you get to a point where everything becomes red.
Yes.
I really liked that about it. Well, and then what's interesting even further after that is it seems like everything got back to its normal tones. So I think that was an interesting choice there to do. I think cold tones, cold filters and stuff work really well in a lot of horror movies. In this one, though, they didn't use the blue lights to create those tones. But they did for the red. But that worked. It totally worked.
Especially in context, right?
Yes, exactly. It kind of starts out like, what is it, 28 days later-ish type, him waking up, strapped. We don't really know much about him. I was on board with that, too. I have to say that when you get your first real look at the zombies, it's a female zombie who interacts with the female lead, Mara. The makeup was really, really bad. I can't tell you how much I actually hated it. It was super pink. And I can't tell if it was just poor application or they were actually trying to make it scaly. I really don't know. So at that point, when I actually saw the full frontal face, I was like, whoa, that's so bad. Pink's a poor choice there. I felt like that really... The later zombies, though, got better. I don't know what happened with that particular makeup. Don't know why they chose to do close-ups of that particular makeup, but it was awful.
She was only like partially turned too, right?
Yeah.
Although pink is still kind of a weird choice.
Right? Did you feel the same? I mean, when I saw it, it literally, like, I went, whoa, that's horrible. Who looked at that and said, that looks great on camera? When I think of stuff like that, that really makes me question a lot of the choices in the movie. So I'm just saying, I'm not trying to be too picky, but pink's hard. Pink's a hard color.
Yeah, because by the time they get to Ry Barrett and his makeup, it's a lot more effective.
Right.
Right? It's way better. And that's why I was saying she's the only one that I was like, whoa, and then it got way better. So with all that being said, I did think that the movie was too long. I felt like a lot of what happened could have been sped up a bit. The characters could have been developed a little bit faster. It could have come to fruition sooner. And it was kind of boring at points.
No.
Yeah, I did. Because I was like, well, really, there's no real, there's no real arc. But I didn't hate it. It was okay. Like I said, I'm not a huge zombie movie lover, so perhaps I'm not the greatest judge of this, but I mean, the movie's okay. I liked it. I liked it for what it was. It's got its pluses, its minuses. It's pretty. Where they were is attractive. Like I said, the lighting, the cinematography is good. I think the shots were good. I think the acting is good. So, it's got a lot going for it. That's my first thoughts. Yeah. Yep.
Jeff, what is your first impression of Deadsight?
So again, and I guess that's normal for independent films. We have a very limited number of characters, and in this case, mostly Mara and Ben. There's a couple other, Gator, Ry Barrett, who I never heard anybody call him Gator, but that's what they list him as or give him credit as. And then the sick woman you're talking about, Crystal, are the only ones that have lines, I think, besides Mara and Ben.
Yeah, I think so.
I really like the premise. I like the idea of, Ben wakes up in the ambulance and he's handcuffed to the stretcher and he's blind. His eyes are bandaged and there's nobody around. And then also how Mara gets pulled into it. She's a police officer and she just basically heading into work and starts to realize nobody's on the line. She gets a call from her mother saying she and her dad are not coming because he's not feeling well, and that's it. So it came on pretty fast. I thought the acting was really good. Liv Collins as Mara and Adam Siebold as Ben. I thought they did a really good job of showing, at different times, desperation and confusion and fear and the kind of shock you would experience in those situations. We get some exploding heads from shotgun blasts.
Yes.
There's a fair amount of jump scares, but they're legitimate jump scares in my book. There's no cats in the cupboard.
That didn't actually bother me. How I feel about jump scares. In this, they didn't bother me. I was like, okay, that's fine. Yeah, acceptable.
They made sense in the story. But there is something that bothered me, and I felt like there was some pretty big holes or maybe stupid choices for the characters. And I'll just talk about one. So Ben is handcuffed to this stretcher, and when he wakes up, he realizes he's by himself. So he's trying to get away, and he rips this rail assembly off the stretcher, the handcuffs, and it's two bars screwed together, and at the end they're spread apart. They make a kind of a Y, so he can't get the handcuff off over him. So he kind of uses that as a crutch and takes off down the road. I guess there's maybe two things here. At some point, maybe because that truck came by, but he takes off the road. He's blind, but he decides to walk up a really steep hill without knowing.
Well, he also hears the chimes.
Oh, I didn't get that.
He hears the wind chimes, so he wants to go to the house.
From there, he could barely hear him when he got there.
Those utensils.
Forks and knives.
Boy, I didn't. And then the other thing was they show this well enough. Those two bars are screwed together with the bolt is fastened by a wing nut.
Which you could take apart.
Which is designed to unscrew by hand. So I'm kind of like, why did you not at least try to straighten one of those or take that wing nut off? You could have felt that. I don't know. That bothered me. That seemed like a really basic survival thing to look at. Although we do find out later why he's on the stretcher, and I assumed why he was blind and why he was handcuffed. So there was a couple of things like that just bothered me. When Mara finds him in this house, she never once asked him why he's handcuffed, which I don't understand. Why? Now, maybe she just figured he was going to lie, but just little things like that really sort of took me out of it. And then as they're fighting people and doing stuff, they keep getting weapons, but then they just kind of drop them along the way.
Yes, he dropped I was like, wait, you just going to leave that there?
Yeah, he buries an axe in this guy's head, and he's got a hold of it. Pull it out. The thing's dead. And I guess maybe if you're blind, he just let go and got the hell out of there.
Didn't he bury that axe in actually like a plank of wood instead of his head?
Well, he ended up getting him eventually.
Yeah,
I don't know how he got him, but
yeah. But anyway, yeah, that's hilarious. He keeps.
So the little things like that just bother me, and there's more of that. But I the acting, the construction of how things moved along, where they ended up, some of the settings they used, I was along for the ride.
Yeah, I like the way you figured out where the layout of the house.
Yeah.
I mean, they took time to do that, and he was using the piece of metal,
right? And she uses the rope to try to help him, but that
doesn't work. Yeah,
he kind of blows out right away.
That doesn't work. So I had a much favorable reaction to this. And most of it has to do with the two actors. Liv Collins, who also was a co-writer of the script, I thought she was fantastic. And I really liked Adam Siebold as Ben. He was mysterious, but yet was sympathetic for him at the same time, because we're suspicious as an audience of him as well because of the handcuffs, right?
Right.
We don't know if he's a good guy or a bad guy, but yet he's in this situation, and the more we learn about him, the more we begin to like him. And when the two characters finally interact, and he can tell by the way she's acting and breathing that she's pregnant, and he tells the story about his own wife.
Right.
Yeah, that's it. You're on his side at that point if you weren't already. So I really enjoyed that, and I liked the way that she was mistrusting of him, right? Because she saw the handcuffs, so she told him, stay put, right? She freed him of the cane, but then went ahead and handcuffed him with the handcuffs. So she certainly wasn't going to trust him.
Right.
And it didn't matter why until she needed his help, until she felt sympathetic for him. And at that point, the surroundings outweighed that, right? So I thought that was interesting. It's funny. Like I enjoyed the fact that he never kept a weapon, but at least he always kept finding more, and that was kind of fun. I just don't believe for a minute that he wouldn't bang against a tree and like break something, fall over and break. It's just like
right.
He's out in the wilderness. So if he was walking down the street, I bought that, right? Because he could tell when the grass started in the street, and he could keep going.
Right.
But once he got into I can't. With eyes wide open, I can barely not break a leg going through shit like that.
That was a steep hill.
And he was going through thickets too. And oh my God. Well, good for him. But once he was in the house, it was fine. But I really liked when he encountered Gator, Ray Barrett, who I thought was a great character. We learned that him and his brother were the ones that were firing at the zombies as they were driving down the street, and inadvertently saved him from certain doom early on, only because they missed him, which was great. And then I'm pretty sure that was his brother, Gator's brother, that showed up earlier. But what Gator has to go through, and his admission that he's coward, right?
Yep.
I liked him, even though he was a total redneck dick. But at the same time, there was a humanity in him that this actor, Ray Barrett, gave him. I really liked this actor. He might have made a bigger impression than the other two in the short period of time he's there. So for me, the cast was a big part of why I liked this. The zombies themselves weren't groundbreaking at all. I was a little worried it was going to be, cabin in the woods once they got to the house, and thankfully they broke away from that. And I enjoyed that it went somewhere else. And is there a character arc? Maybe, maybe not, but we get something of a character arc in Ben, I think, what the decisions he has to make, which end up being heroic, right? So, zombie films are a dime a dozen, and often they're very bad. The lower the budget, the worse they get. Sometimes they get inventive, and this one is one of those sometimes. I think maybe not with the zombies, but with the situation and the characters. I would wager that Liv Collins writing the dialogue for her character probably
helps.
is a big part of it, because her character felt very authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because Ben's is mostly a body language for a good portion of it. So when he's in the cab and he's trying to figure out what to do, you felt it, right? It was a great performance, a great physical performance. Yeah, I thought it was great. I don't know if I buy that he would survive, but it happened.
Well, there weren't that many zombies, so it's a small town. Clearly,
yeah, they were kind of in the middle of nowhere. So.
Yeah, so that helps.
And luck was on his side.
Yeah.
Luck was on his side.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, Karma was happy with him for some reason. All right, is there anything else we want to say about this before we wrap things up? Is there something that we maybe haven't touched on? Because it doesn't really have themes or anything, right? I mean, maybe slightly redemption, slightly.
But see, I don't know if it is redemption, because here's the truth. It said suspicion as far as when it relates to him. Personally, I think he was innocent, but that's just me.
Well, you get that feeling, right? You definitely do. Right.
Yeah, of course. To me, he had no ill will or intent. Yeah, they both just seemed like good characters. Like I said, for a zombie movie, yeah. And the acting was good. Yeah, I mean, well played, sir. Well played.
Well, I'm definitely a fan of Liv Collins now.
Yes.
I thought she was fantastic.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, she totally sold everything about her character. Like when the zombie lady, who isn't quite a zombie yet, drives off with the police car, and she's just sitting there. The first thing she does, she had that blanket, right? Because she was going to put the blanket around her.
Yeah. The
zombie lady, and she just drops it and starts walking. What else are you going to do, right? Okay.
Well, so really, let's think about this. Further proof that the town is incredibly small is that she feels like her only option is to make it back to that ambulance, instead of trying to find
another house,
anything else. Yes.
Right.
So I guess that's what makes it actually work for the movie in one regard, because, he could possibly survive if there's, 20 zombies in the whole town or whatever it is. I mean, I don't know how many there are, but, not many. Yeah,
and then what he discovers and how he reacts in the house. up on the second floor.
Yeah.
There's some fun things. There's not a whole lot of it, and I think which arguably it doesn't need, but it makes it smaller film in that case. But
sometimes simple is better, though.
True.
The one thing I will say about the movie is that I don't think it tried to be more than what it could be. That's a good thing, because I think if they had tried to go harder, I think it would have failed miserably.
It wouldn't have felt right?
Yeah.
So.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's wrap this up. Let's give our final thoughts, our score, and favorite scene for the film Deadsight. Chris will start us off.
Okay, like I said, I'm not the best judge because I'm not a huge zombie lover, but if you like zombie movies, you should watch it. It's interesting. It got my attention. I didn't zone out too much throughout it, so that's pretty decent. Just don't expect any great zombie movie makeup. That's all. I gave it a 2.5. Yeah.
All right.
But my favorite scene, actually, my favorite scene was a little bit hard, and I know it's CGI, but I don't care. I like the shotgun to the head. I liked it. It's so ridiculous. Absolutely the most ridiculous thing. But I actually, that's one of my favorite things. I was like, yes, I am totally okay with this. And it was good.
Yeah, we kind of needed it at that point, right?
Yeah.
It was rewarding at that point. Yeah, I like that too. Good choice. Jeff, what is your final thoughts, your score, and favorite scene for Deadsight?
As I said, I think it's an interesting concept or way it's laid out, the situations that the characters are in. The acting is excellent, and if you could get past sort of what, from my point of view, are dumb decisions by the characters, maybe I wouldn't be thinking so straight in the situation either. But I think it's worth a watch. I'm going 2.75.
Okay, not too far off. Yeah,
I enjoyed it. If it wasn't for the dumb stuff that I just kept. I usually don't do that. I usually just go along for the ride and don't question stuff. But it just seemed too obvious for me anyway. A favorite scene. I think Doc already talked about it when Mara, when her vehicle gets stolen. I just thought that was a great indicator of her character. It was like, oh, one of these days, was sort of her attitude.
Yeah.
And she gets more of those too, and just keeps kind of shaking her head, moving forward. So,
yeah, you get the impression that's her life.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got to say, when he asked her, and I did laugh when he asked her, well, what else stressful has happened today? That was pretty funny. Yeah, I was like, yeah, that's appropriate.
Well, I enjoyed this film more than you guys. I'm going to give it a 3.25.
Ooh.
And most of the reason is because of the actors and the lead roles. I really liked, one, how they tied them together, because he gets on the horn to try to get somebody to come save him, and she hears it. And so when they meet up and they have that connection, it tied them together in an interesting, subtle, little teeny way, right? That it's a thin fabric, but yet it works, right? Because now they know when they both experienced this for the first time, right? So it gives them a connection, and then they build, their characters just build on that. I don't know. It's a weird, teeny little thing, but I really like that. It's a zombie film that the zombies don't matter. It could be anything, right? It could have been replaced by hungry hippos, and it would still work. Why did I do hungry hippos? But it could have been rabid raccoons.
Hungry hippos.
Right? Yeah, right. It could be rabid raccoons. It could be anything.
Rabid raccoons would be so cute.
Wouldn't it? But it
yes.
It because it's
zombievers.
Zombievers would be better. But it's their survival of this, right? And how they react and how, they live up to the challenges that are in front of them physically, right? And I don't know. I dug it. And I think the director is promising. He's done quite a few things. This is his 7th feature. I think the first film that caught my attention was way back in 2011, Monster Brawl, just because how outrageous it was. So I guess this is Canadian, right? I think that was a Canadian film. So this must be.
That makes sense. It kind of looked like Canada.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful. I mean, it was beautiful there.
But I keep making films. I think he's got something here. Yeah. My favorite scene is going to be Gator's scene. When he's kind of explaining. I just love how that whole scene played out, the dialogue, the way Gator, who normally would these two characters would never talk, right? You get the impression that the only reason these characters are even talking is because of the circumstances. And his resignation of what's happening, I found that entirely fascinating, the whole bit of it. And sad.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, right?
Yeah. Yep.
It showed a lot of his character, the fact that he brought the dude in and decided, to technically kind of help him, really. Yeah. Slightly
selfish, but not,
Yeah.
It's complex and it's short. It's a very small part of the film, and it serves more to inform the stakes and the scenario than it is the characters. But yet it builds the character.
Yeah, because I'm assuming that what he talks about may actually be the reason that it started, right? It could be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, maybe.
There's a little exposition in there too, but that's not the important part. It does give our character, our lead, some strength, though.
Yes.
Because he hasn't really visually been able to put together now because of interacting with this guy, and he now understands the stakes.
Uh-huh.
So in that respect, I guess it does help out.
He also gained a shotgun, which is the real MVP.
I like when he's in there and he's trying to figure things out, and the other guy's trying to bust through the window. Oh, that was funny. But whatever.
He didn't lose the shotgun, though.
No.
I know.
Thank goodness.
And somehow he still made that shot. Good for him, right? Yay. Mm-hmm. Which is your favorite scene. So there you go.
Yep.
All right. There's our films for tonight. Hagazussa, which I'm not entirely certain I'm pronouncing that right, but that's how I'm going to go. And then Deadsight, which is a title that took me a long time to figure out how to say that for some weird, stupid reason. It's very obvious, but I don't know. It's just two words that oddly don't belong together, but make perfect sense for this film, right? So,
yeah.
Yep.
All right. So Hagazussa is out on Shudder and Amazon Prime right now, and Deadsight is coming your way July 2nd.
How's it? Is it going to be streaming anywhere, or is it?
Yes, on demand, they say. So
okay, perfect.
I would imagine it'll eventually make its way to your streaming services, but the on-demand implies that you're going to have to pay for it.
Excellent.
All right, next week we haven't been doing like what's coming up next, but I think if things go the way we're planning, we're going to have something a little special, a little different than usual, but I think in a positive way. It's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. Make things a little crazy. What are they going to do? Who are these people?
Tune in for episode 74 for something wacky and out of... No, it's not going to be that crazy, but we'll see. We'll see. Jeff.
Yes.
Crystal.
Yes.
Thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
All right, let's say goodnight.
Good night.
Good night.